everybody. This is Alan with Meet the Thriller Author. And on the podcast today, I have Susan Elia MacNeal. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ellen.
So great to have you here. I want to say something right away. I was reading your bio, and I saw that your first job was you were an assistant for John Irvin. And the World According to Garp was one of the first books from my youth that kind of inspired me. Like, whoa, you can write like this type of story.
Yeah.
So it's just
I
kind of
remember reading it and staying up all night to finish it. It was so amazing. Yeah.
yeah, just the way and the topics that he tackled, all everything. I was just like, whoa! I didn't realize you could do that in a book. I think it was my dad's book, and I read it when I was like 15 or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, I have to ask you, how was it working for him? And did you anything you learned way back then? Did you take it with you as a writer?
There are a few things. First of all, it was, a great experience. I loved living in Vermont, which is, where he and his wife and his family lived. I didn't live with them. I had my own apartment. But the one thing that I really learned from John Irving is how to be a professional writer. And basically that is, you get up, you have your coffee, you start writing, you keep writing, you write all day. And then maybe around 5, you knock off. And well, if you're him, you go do some wrestling moves in your private gym. But you really treat it like a day in, day out, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, at least professional job. And I think that's really good to see because it sort of teaches you, like, you don't wait for the muse, you don't wait to be inspired, you don't wait for really anything. Just as like people, all of us who've had jobs, like, we don't wait to be inspired to go to work. That would never happen. Come on. So, that's what I learned.
Yeah, no, that's a great lesson. Yeah, yeah. If that, you'll be fired somehow if you're not doing your job, even if you're writing.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
and then I also noticed that you worked for some of the big five publishing houses too. Is that strategic on your point? John Irvin, publishing houses, were you trying to stay in the industry? Were you already thinking about becoming a writer someday?
I was thinking about becoming a writer at that point. I just really, really loved books and I wanted to work with books. And the John Irving position definitely gave me a leg up to get a big five publishing job. And yeah, and I really loved it. I really loved just being in contact with authors and working with everybody in the publishing industry. So yeah.
That's kind of cool. So you like your previous jobs and your job now as writing is you've always sort of been like in the publishing world.
Yeah, indeed.
And that's really cool. Um, all right, so I was just kind of wondering too now. So you're back to what your actual books, what you're writing now. So it was just fascinating with the Maggie Hope series because it's all set in during World War II. So of course I have to ask, what inspired you to choose that period of time for your books? Is that something that you were fascinated with about? Are you a history buff?
I've always loved history and I've always loved World War II. However, this is a crazy story. It has to do with the Muppets and Jim Henson and Bear in the Big Blue House, which was a show on Disney Channel back in the day. And my husband was actually playing Bear. And it was huge, not only in the US, but in the UK. So I went with him on one of his business trips to London. And he was, of course, doing all of his, Bear in the Big Blue House things. And I was on my own. So I went to the cabinet war rooms. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but they're your listeners, but the cabinet war rooms are this incredible now museum. They were the rooms underneath Whitehall where Winston Churchill and all of his colleagues basically ran World War II. And it was considered, if not bomb proof, the best next thing. It's very underground and it's under this huge slab of concrete. And now it's a museum. And I just remember walking around it and, walking the same halls as Churchill would have walked and all of his, colleagues, and just being utterly captivated and moved. And, it was just, I could just picture everything happening. So that was really the catalyst. So I always say I have to thank Bear in the Big Blue House, Disney, and the Jim Henson Company.
So it got you there, but it's a different direction.
Yeah, not the way you'd expect it,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, that is cool. I did notice that from your bio too, that your husband's a puppeteer. Like, that's incredible. Never met a professional puppeteer. So that's a very creative house. You're writing. He's a puppeteer.
Yeah, and we have a son who's in college, first year, vocal music major. So
Oh wow! So it rubbed off, and
yeah.
um, so I was kind of curious too, with all the historical, writing these historical mysteries. What's your approach then on the research? It's just be kind of interesting, and anything that you discovered during your research for these books that kind of sticks out in your mind.
Well, I will say that truth truly is stranger than fiction, and World War II has some of the craziest stories. I mean, the stuff that we learned in school doesn't even scratch the surface of the truly insane maneuvering. And, we're all looking at it from, now, present day, and we know how everything turns out. But I think, one of the things that's so incredible is how dire it truly was. They didn't have the foresight that we do, so it just was never a given that people would win. So it's always something very much on my mind when I'm writing, that these people don't know.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, that's something so fascinating that I don't think a lot of people realize or remember that even World War One and Two, they were both close.
Yeah,
You think it
definitely.
wouldn't be? I think Norm Macdonald had a bit about that. um, and so I'm just sort of curious then too. So now with your 12th book now, this is your 12th book in the Maggie Hope series. This is to be published on May 21st. So FYI for people looking here at the date here. Can you give us a little sneak peek of what it's about and what can you expect from the latest book in the series?
Sure. So it's called The Last Hope because it is the last book in the Maggie Hope mystery series. And Maggie, who is a secret agent, one of the SOE special operations executive in World War II. And she's run by, of all people, Kim Philby, the Cambridge
Oh yeah.
spy. So, and that's true. He ran the spies for the Iberian Peninsula, so Portugal and Spain. So I had to put that in there once I figured that out. And she meets with an old friend or frenemy, Coco Chanel, the designer. And she also has another task. She has been asked to assassinate Heisenberg, who was working on the nuclear bomb for the Nazi side. And she basically said, I will, but only if I'm sure they're close to getting the bomb. So her own mission to herself is to talk to him and go to a lecture and find out exactly where he is with the bomb. And she can do this because she has a background in math and physics. So anyway, it's all kind of crazy. And there are spies, and there's Lisbon, and there's Madrid, and there are bullfighters, and, all kinds of crazy things. But, it's I think, a good send off, a good finale.
Yeah, that's something that you mentioned the historical figures too. I was kind of wondering about that because you've had Winston Churchill in your books, and now Heisenberg and Coco Chanel. How does that process work? Do you have to like get permission, or is it because they're public figures? It's okay. And have you heard from any of their heirs about your books at all? Any feedback?
No, because they're public figures, it's okay. And I'm also pretty careful to keep to, actual facts.
Mm.
And, if I'm going to go way off and really fictionalize a character, I will, of course, change names and details. So
Yeah, and I read that you mentioned that the Coco Chanel was actually did do some spying during World War II. I did not know.
she did. Yeah. There was a book that came out in the mid 90s, actually, which sort of broke that story. Although people have been whispering about it forever that she was a Nazi, but she definitely had a Nazi lover during the war. She was what was called a horizontal collaborator. And not only did she have this lover and hang out with a bunch of very high ranking Nazis, but she had several missions. She had an agent. She had her own code name, which was Westminster. Um, this is all on record. I did not make any of this up. So, exactly what her motives were, you can't really say, but she definitely did these things. So,
Wow. So yeah, I think different now when I see Coco Chanel products.
I know they've done a really good job of keeping this hidden, quite frankly. And she did also, she bought a lot of people off.
Mm,
There were a lot of people who were writing memoirs after the war was over. And again, this is all on record. She gave large sums of money. So
yeah, well, no wonder. So that's how it works.
it works.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, I think that's so cool too, because a lot of stuff's coming out. I know a couple of years ago, I was surprised that Julia Child was also did some espionage on the right side for the OSS, and I was like, well, Julia
Yes,
Child, a chef? I had no idea.
Julia Child. But that's the really interesting thing about World War II is that, this wasn't a war fought entirely by trained soldiers. I mean, not all of these people were in the military or, military school graduates. Like they were just regular people who volunteered and who did things on their own. And it's kind of incredible, what they accomplished.
So I'm also kind of curious too, because this is, I believe is this your 11th book in the series, the Maggie Hope series?
11th book in the series, 12th book total, because I did write one standalone called Mother, Daughter, Traitor, Spy.
Oh, okay. That was also set during World War II, right? I remember
Yeah,
reading. Yeah.
just before World War II in Los Angeles.
Okay. Yeah. So how was it? How was the progression then from Maggie from the beginning to the end? And did you, when you first started writing the book, were you hoping it was going to go this long, or did it just kind of evolve?
Oh, it just kind of evolved, and I never dreamed it would go this long, or that I would have this kind of career. I really just wrote it as a standalone, and quite frankly, it was rejected everywhere. It was rejected by like every agent in New York practically, and then every editor in New York practically. But the editor who did take it on asked for a 2-book deal. So that was like right away, I was sort of under contract to write the sequel. And then that did well. So they kept asking me for more. So then here we are.
Yeah, can't say no to that. So I was kind of curious too. Now, so what are some of the themes that you explore then that you've explored in this book? Because I'm so fascinated about that. Because you, like I said, they're also historical figures, so you're basing them on actual events. So could you just a little bit about the history and some of the events that you covered during this series?
Well, one thing in Mr. Churchill's Secretary, which is the first book that people are always shocked by, is that Britain was also basically at war with Ireland at the same time they were getting bombed by the Nazis. So the IRA was planting, mailbox bombs and things like that. And the IRA was a big threat. And, that kind of got washed over in history. We don't think a lot about the IRA and Ireland remaining neutral and Ireland sort of doing that. So that was like something that people were kind of shocked by when Mr. Churchill's secretary came out. And again, all documented, all historically accurate. I think with this book, I think it's interesting, especially with Oppenheimer, the film out, we're able to sort of see a little bit about the Nazis' nuclear program and just how different it was and how truly far behind they were compared to the Americans. And I think that's really interesting. I'm not sure if people know that, but the Allies struck a lot of really good blows, like taking out their heavy water situation and things like that. So the Germans weren't as far along as we thought.
And what is it? I'm kind of curious about the challenges now too of how it is, because you're working in real events. So how is it to maintaining the historical events, those facts, and then but still then creating a fun read that a fun mystery to read? Is that challenging, or is that?
Oh yeah, it's definitely challenging. It takes a lot of research and being like really, really comfortable in that time and like what's going to be happening and has happened. Um, and all the while like the characters can't possibly know the future, so they're in the dark. I, I don't know. I guess you just sort of follow it and you look at that day in history and like what they would have known, like what would you look at what the papers showed and what they would have read in the morning news, that kind of thing, what would have been on the radio. Yeah.
Hmm.
You
And you,
pretend for
huh?
them.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's like you have to put yourself in their shoes,
So it's kind
with
of
what's
cool.
going on in terms of like the news and what they know and what they believe.
So you're like going into like a little time machine, kind of.
Kind of, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. I've never written historical fiction, so it'd be hard to be like, oh, and he checked his phone. Oh, wait a second.
No, 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 no.
uh,
That part does get a little easier though as you do more books because you know you're in that time period. So yeah.
can imagine. And what about your research now too? Because I'm so curious about that now. Is a lot of this stuff now like online? Or are you actually going to libraries, the old microfiche, or how?
I have done it all. I have done online research. I have gone to university libraries and special collections where you know you have to get the librarian to bring out big boxes for you. I've looked things up on microfiche in libraries. You name it, I've done it. Because if there's like a certain thing that I want to research, I just cannot rest until I'm like, you know, dog with a bone. I cannot let it go until I figured it out. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's probably for younger. I'm dating myself here, but for younger listeners, they probably don't even know what a
Oh, I know.
microfiche or
It's
Dewey
microfiche.
Decimal is.
Microfiche was like little tiny pictures on almost like film.
Yeah, and you like
It
rolled
on
it.
a reader and you know you could flip the pages that way. That was way before the internet.
Yeah, and it's kind of like looking at the what do you call those little negatives? Remember for the pictures? Yeah. Anyway, we're dating myself here. Um, and so let me ask you something now too, because you've been writing this series for a while, and it's been such a big part of your life. How do you feel now? Uh, since this is the last book, are you excited? Are you nervous?
I'm I'm always really nervous when a new book comes out. Yes, excited, also kind of gutted, you know, sad, happy. I've been through all the stages of grief. You know, it's been quite a whirlwind of emotions, especially like this whole last year. In addition to this book coming out and the series coming to a close, my son went to college. So not only did I lose Maggie Hope, I lost my baby too. Although he's fine. He's back actually for the summer. So it's all good. And
So,
Maggie's gonna go off and like do great things. So I'm happy for both of them.
so that's double whammy, double empty nest syndrome from your character and your child.
Absolutely. So it was kind of an emotional year, but we made it through. And yeah, I'm just so excited. I have a new book deal, two book deal with a new publisher. And so the first one is a standalone. And it's about World War II spies, but not during World War II, during the 1960s in London. And they get together, these female secret agents like Maggie Hope, but not Maggie Hope. And they realize that one of their own betrayed them during the war. So they band together with the daughter of the woman who died and try to figure out who betrayed them, but in Britain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the next thing is starting a new series. And so far, it looks like it will be set in New York City in the late 1950s. We will have an Italian American private investigator. And I was thinking of it as, you know, Agatha Christie meets Mrs. Maisel meets The Godfather, because we're going to also delve into some of like the New York things, including the mafia. So
Oh, that sounds awesome. Those both
yeah,
sound really cool.
thank
Yeah.
you. I'm
Yeah.
excited. So like I'm really excited about these new things, but you know, the other book is coming out. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this is the first the standalones that's for next year, I would imagine sometime or
Next year, I hope next year, or maybe like just into the next year
Mhm.
after that. So
Okay. And so I was kind of curious about your writing process too. So I just have to get nosy about that, uh, especially with all this historical stuff. Do you outline all your books in detail, or do you like kind of are you like one of those discovery writers? What's your process like?
you know, I do outlines. And in the past, I've sort of strayed away from it. I make them and then I don't follow them. But for these two books, they're just so convoluted and they have so many cool twists. I want the reader to experience the sort of of those twists. So I plan a lot more carefully now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are your tools for using for writing? Do you use like Microsoft Word or some other software program?
Yeah, I use Microsoft Word. I have I use a laptop. I take it everywhere and anywhere. Yeah.
Uh, And then, I was going to ask you, because I saw that on your website that the series has actually been optioned for by Hollywood, right? By Warner, what is it? Magnolia Productions and Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Any info on that? Or is that, I know that process is crazy.
It's so slow. COVID made everything slower. There have just been all these changes in personnel in all these different places. So, I mean, I'm hopeful, of course, but I'm not like spending a whole lot of time thinking about it. I'm thinking about my next book. So
Yeah.
that I can control. I can't control anything else, but I can control the next book. So that's what I'm focusing on.
And you mentioned when the John Irvin's working every day. Is that something that do you write every day, even, or do you
I
have?
do.
Yeah.
I do. In fact, I sort of at this point, I force myself to take weekends off because for a while I wasn't, and I got really, really burned out. And let me tell you, burnout, it's a buzzword, but it's a real thing. Like you can get incredibly burned out. And if you don't take time off, if you don't take care of yourself, that is what will happen. So I'm much more careful now. But honestly, I get really into things and I just want to like be obsessed. So
Yeah, you really do spend like in one book. I mean, you spend so much time in it too. That I can imagine that after a while you're so sick of it. Until,
sick of it. I mean, I really love my character so much that I don't think I've ever gotten sick of it. I think just I just get, after a while it's just sort of tiring, but it just means you need to keep balance in your life.
yeah, part of the process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so kind of curious too, because you are sticking with like the mystery type themes. Is that were you a fan of that genre before you started writing these?
I was, and I like the fact that, most books are mysteries. They might not be marketed as such, and there might not be an actual murder, but most books actually have like a central mystery that, the protagonist and you, the reader, are trying to figure out. So, in a lot of ways, I think where books are in the bookstore has much more to do with what kind of cover they have and what kind of marketing they have than what's really between the covers. So, yes, I'm a historical mystery writer and I'm proud of that. But I also think, all of our books are kind of mysteries.
Mhm. Yeah, I do like your covers are really cool. They're very like
I
Art
love my
Deco. How was that? What was the process when you first saw the first one? I mean, were you excited right away? Were you worried in the beginning that they're going to get it, or?
No, I mean, I saw the first one and I absolutely loved it. And the artist, I have to give a shout out to Mick Wiggins, and he's a professional illustrator. He does work for the New Yorker. He does children's books. He does other book covers. He's an incredible man, incredible artist, and I'm just so lucky to have had him illustrate my covers for so many years.
Yeah, no, they're really really great covers. So, uh, and then I always ask this for my guests because I have aspiring writers that listen to this podcast. Any advice for somebody who wants to start writing mysteries, and especially if they're historical in nature?
I would just say follow your obsessions. If you are obsessed with something, if you can't wait to read about it, to write about it, to sort of figure everything out, then I think your readers will go along on that journey with you. Don't try to follow like trends. Like that's just seems really destructive to me because that's, it's like making a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Like find your own like weird niche and really dig in.
Yes, that's some advice, and I really have noticed that too with your books too, because the your first Maggie Hope book. It's kind of interesting how you like. She was very a smart person and everything, but because back in the 1940s, the only job she could get was as a typist. Is that
Right.
was that your is that was that something that when you were planning this, you're like that you decided that you wanted to like write about that era and how women were kind of like shoved to the back.
Well, it's interesting. When I went to the Churchill War Rooms in London, there is this little room that's, the typist office, and you see all these different typewriters, and how small everything is, and the hooks where they could put their little hats, and a little mirror so they could touch up their lipstick. And I just I don't know, I just pictured this woman sort of chafing at having to do that and not getting to do, like, in more interesting, more important things, and feeling sort of like your brain is being wasted. And that sort of was the catalyst for Maggie Hope.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's yeah, I found that very, 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 very fascinating. And then to see her grow, like you said, by the next last book, now she's like, they want her to assassinate somebody. So that's big growth for the character.
Definitely a character arc, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Um, all right, I really appreciate your time here. Where can listeners find out more about you and your books? Yeah, are you active on social media and your website? Can you give us the all that good
I'm
stuff?
on social media. My website is susaneliamacneal.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter as Susan MacNeal, and I'm on Instagram as Susan Elia MacNeal. And I know that all doesn't make sense, but those were the names I got. And I'd love to hear from readers, so please say hi.
All right, awesome. And I'll have links up to all that, of course, so people can.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
um, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, and thanks so much, and congrats on on your pub day today. We're recording this on the day that your book releases, so
Ah,
congratulations.
very exciting. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Bye.